Last time I have kept you hanging with counting, and that's easy, right? To learn how to count in kindergarten. See the toys over there? So let's try this. The dancers I've checked out count to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4, 1. It should be 1. 1, 2, 3. So I checked out some guitarists that say, just count to 3. Life will be a lot easier. Let's try this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Ah, that doesn't feel right, does it? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Ah, that's a pickup. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Or maybe it is 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. 2, 3, 6. Huh? So we know that counting Sevillanas is a bit tricky. Depending on what your part is, you can have a different view. Percussionists like Paquito González, who by the way is the #1 flamenco Cajón player for me, counts it in 3s and even throws it in the same pot with fandangos.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Kai Narezo from Flamenco Explained also counts it in 3s and mentions that it might sometimes feel like 6s, but then again it gets uneven if you count to 6 all the way through when playing the guitar. And that's the point. A dancer counts it in 6s. If you take Sevillanas dance lessons, you count to 6 all the time. You'll see an example later. By the way, if you want to sing it, you are probably not counting it. But there is a tutorial by Jaime el Estampio that is worth checking out for Sevillanas singing. It's not strict counting, but he very much delivers the pulse you have to feel for singing Sevillanas. I really like his approach. A good example on how complicated counting and setting on 1 meter can be seen when you look into one of the books from the great Juan Martín. He suggests to notate it in another rhythmic layer, where 8th notes become 16th notes compared to every other notation I found. It is notated in 3/4, but you count to 6, and the 1 of every bar becomes the 3. But you still start at 1, since traditional Sevillanas usually have a pickup bar as well. Are you confused yet? When learning and analyzing a new piece, I usually look at the meter first. I find it very interesting that for the easy palo Sevillana, I have to do the harmonic and melodic analysis first for the counting to make sense. Maybe I'm nerding out too much here, but I find this very exciting. When you take a look at the patterns of the rhythm group, palmas, cajón, nudillos, you can see that it presents a ternary rhythm pattern, playing a 6-beat COMPÁS with accents every 3 beats. This also helps the dancer to feel the dance patterns that count to 6.
Y hace 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Now let's take a look at the harmonic rhythm. If we take a close look at these salidas, for example, we can observe a binary harmonic pattern. This holds true for the main parts as well, since the salidas are just a shortened version of those. The harmonic rhythm shows binary patterns, which in 3/4 are only completed when shown in a 6-beat COMPÁS. If we look at functional harmony for a second, we can see that tension and release of dominant and tonic functions also suggest a 6-beat COMPÁS. This also enforces my intention to see the salida as a 2 times 6-beat COMPÁS, making it 6 bars like mentioned in my structural analysis. If you put both patterns next to each other, you can observe the polyrhythmic nature of the Sevillanas that make them so catchy and fun to listen to, yet tricky to analyze. The fun part is that as a guitarist, you get to take care of the best of both worlds, ternary rhythm sections and binary melody sections. Or do we? When taking a closer look at the strumming patterns, What looks like ternary often feels binary because the fourth beat of the 6-beat COMPÁS is not stressed, but the harmonies and the rhythmic figures often indicate a stress on beat 3 and 5, just like the melody section. Listen to this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When we listen to the rhythmic example, we can see that beat 5 is more often than not accented as well, which clearly established out of polyrhythmic feeling that happens if you mix binary and ternary. I want to point out that I am happy to have others back up my findings and I don't just make it all up. Check out the papers It's Not That Easy by Bernat, Jiménez de Cinero Butch and Flamenco Rhythm by Oscar Herrero. If I found them earlier, I would have saved myself a lot of analyzing, but I am happy that I did solve the riddles and went through that, what helps me feel the Sevillanas better than just playing exercises. I strongly encourage you to check it out for yourselves too. But wait, that's not all. Here comes part 3. You might or might not be familiar with the common blues structure, where you have the Roman numerals, that's the degrees, the first, the fourth, and the fifth degree, and this translates to the tonic, the subdominant, and the dominant function. And even if you change this beyond reason, the main structure still more or less stays the same. And I was hoping to find something similar for Sevillanas as well. So let's see what I came up with. I took 15 Sevillanas and transcribed the chord changes in hope to find out tendencies in the harmonic structure. I used mostly traditional pieces to avoid jazzed up versions. I took pieces from Sabicas, Paco de Lucia, Juan Martín, as well as instructional pieces from Ravenna Flamenco, Flamenco Explained, the German flamenco book, Die Flamencogitarre. After writing down the chords, I added the harmonic functions for each bar, reducing them to the main functions and coloring them blue for tonic, green for subdominant, and red for dominant. 15 pieces is the bare minimum, but it was enough work to find out some tendencies and weaken my uncertainties when I try to write my own Sevillanas. Of course, a higher resolution like 100 Sevillanas and coloring per beat would be preferable. But until I get subsidization for this kind of research, 15 pieces and reduced to the major functions per bar must suffice. It is definitely enough to see some harmonic tendencies. We can identify a very common intro pattern. The first half of the salida, which is the melody part, most often starts with the tonic and almost always ends in a dominant function to resolve back to the tonic in the fourth bar, which renders the rhythmical half of the salida when dancers get ready. The coplas, which is the main part of the Sevillanas, tend to start on the tonic function for the first 3 bars, followed by a major tendency towards dominant functions, building up tension, sometimes only briefly going back to the tonic or occasionally switching to the subdominant, just to build up the tension in bar 9 of the coplas, and finally returning back home to the tonic in bar 10. The last 3 bars are, like the second half of the salida, of rhythmical nature with the same chords and functions. This makes sense if we look at the other possibilities of structuring mentioned in the first analysis video. This concludes my analysis for Sevillanas. In retrospect, I am very happy that I did it, although being a lot more work than I expected. I feel confident to play and compose in that palo now. If you want to dig even deeper into the analysis, I want to encourage you to look at other instruments and try singing. Here is an interesting site that lists how the dancers view the structure, for example. I hope I was able to share my fascination with this analysis, and since this kinda got out of hand, I want to dedicate August to Sevillanas as well. We have talked so much and I don't want the music to fall short. So stay tuned for the next Sevillanas videos. There will be less conversation and more action. Have a good one.